frustration of policymakers and engineers that what they were doing was not considered to be sexy enough or valuable enough, when in reality they believed what they were doing was actually protecting cities from extreme mortality. And these are kind of modern filtration systems. And again, by looking at these things from a bird's eye view from the sky, you begin to see in the technologies a greater understanding of the kind of problems that they were dealing with and how to combat them with various new modern tools. This is this portrayal of garbage problems and waste disposal, problems that don't go away, that kind of build up. Modern day Naples has been fighting major battles other parts of the world have with what to do with excess waste. I wanted to turn to a couple other questions that I think are related to this very, very quickly. Not to suggest that everything related to the development of new infrastructures is technologically focused. Certainly in the last decade, the kind of questioning of traditional kind of environmental protests, environmental actions, had led to a consideration of environment from the vantage point of civil rights, from the vantage point of race. And so the evolution of the so-called environmental justice movement in the late 80s and into the 90s was an attempt to, in one sense, be a little bit more inclusive in dealing with who is at risk from environmental pollution, but also to suggest that environmental protests, environmental reform had been somewhat limited in terms of its focus on class and race. Environmental justice as a movement was meant to be political, was meant to bring to the attention of policymakers the need to rethink environmental policy, to focus on cities as opposed to the countryside, to argue that environmental risks in houses with lead paint on their walls and in neighborhoods where waste disposal facilities were being targeted in neighborhoods of people of color required a rethinking of questions of environmental risk. And actually the terms that were used quite early were built around concepts of environmental racism, which was a much more kind of incendiary term. And the leaders of the environmental justice movement wanted a kind of a positive spin. They felt that environmental equity was not appropriate because the term could imply that everybody was going to be polluted exactly the same. So environmental justice was a term that was decided upon as a way of bringing to attention the need to have some fairness in the way in which people are exposed to waste and to move away from systems that tend to be inherently materially racist. I think what's important about the development of environmental justice is that it does put a powerful kind of cultural phase on issues that had tended to be dealt with in a much more mechanistic or technological way, and therefore kind of balancing our understanding of questions of environmental pollution, environmental risk within kind of an urban context. I wanted to just raise a few general points by way of conclusion. And I've been particularly interested in studying the urban environment with what I've come to believe has been an artificial separation between what we understand as nature and what we understand as the built environment. I use the term nature-built environment nexus as a way to characterize, I think, that distinction. A natural world that tends to exclude humans and a built world that is a product of human action. And my problem with that kind of larger conceptualization of the built environment in particular is the assumption that if humans are outside of nature, that humans are inherently creating artificial entities when they're building cities. The cities are by their very nature are artificial because they're human. And also tends to kind of reinforce the notion that human action, no matter what that action is inherently destructive. And I think that it's important that although we should never defend the destructive tendencies of humans and bulldozing over the natural world for the sake of doing so. At the same time, a broader kind of lens might be useful in understanding how humans deal with their environment. I often tell my students in urban history it's somewhat of a trick, and a cheap kind of glib trick at that. I would ask them in the beginning of the course, what's the difference between a city and an anthill? And they would give me all these different explanations. And then after we've done that for a few minutes, I'd say, there is no difference between a city and an anthill. They're doing the same kinds of things. Well, that's, on the surface of it, somewhat facetious, but on the other hand, in not looking at cities as being places that provide habitat, there are areas for drawing kind of food cultivation into kind of maybe a more efficient mode, the way to use resources, how we commodify certain resources. But not thinking about cities in that way is going to limit the way we think about them overall. So I've kind of a substantial amount of thinking about how to not necessarily develop kind of counterpoint interpretations, but to try to break away from this notion of cities being inherently artificial, try to understand what they do represent within the larger context of history. And also, I think to keep in mind that cities, although the product of human action in some way, are also susceptible to changing climate, geological impacts and topography. And that is the combination of the impact of the physical world and human action that need to be kind of looked at side by side in understanding the development of cities. So regarding them as artificial, I think is a limiting kind of concept. Setting humans in a separate category, I think, diminishes humans within their history. And so what I'm suggesting is that the newer way to start thinking about cities within a historical context provide for kind of broader range of questions that lead themselves not only to a better understanding of our human past, but questions that we can ask about our urban future. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Melosi, for a very thought-provoking presentation. There is time for one or two questions, if there are any right now, and then we'll have time at the end of this panel for more new kind of discussion. Any questions? I can't see a thing.
Yes.
It seems to me that in your beginning history of the development of water supply, you left out the importance of bringing water to fight very real costs and the very real dangers of fire within cities.
I mentioned fire, very briefly probably. And again, keep in mind this is a very, very abbreviated discussion, but in the larger work I've done, I certainly not diminish that importance. That was something that was very, very much on the minds of city officials. But I think I try to complement that with looking at the concern about water use in a variety of other ways. So I would not want to diminish that at all.
Could you please introduce yourself and ask a question?
My name is Rebecca Boger at Brooklyn College. My question for you are, you said we're becoming increasingly urbanized, particularly in the developing world. And this